Right.
having awareness for people that can't.
Right.
What's the worst that's going to happen, to me?
Right. That's exactly where I'm at. I'm like, I'm already living repressive tolerance.
In my ear. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Well, we are live streaming on YouTube, and I'm here with Carob Bartholomew, and Christine Siefen. I'm so happy to see both of you this morning. And we wanted to get together to have a discussion about some events that happened to Carrie very recently when she was giving a speech, and there were some really some radical suppressive tactics being employed that were, I mean, I can only imagine how that must have hit you to have that happen. But I'd love you to just kind of walk us into that. What happened? What was the speech? What was the context? And then how did things play out?
Sure. So one of our senators recently during legislative session pushed for DEI to be removed from higher education. And I went out to support him in that. And even that was an interesting experience. I think I might have shared it before. But when I was in the room, I was shoved by someone.
Wow.
So, and I'm pretty certain who it was, but because I did not turn around to look, I just am like, okay, so that happened. And these people don't understand what DEI is, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't understand, and they think, oh, it sounds nice, so let's go for it. And then the other part is that it's the masochists. So it's the people who truly hate others. And when I say others, I'll be very specific. They truly hate Caucasian people, and feel like it is their turn for vengeance. So I went to that event, and then afterwards, it was removed all the way down from not even being considered as a bill to we were asked to go, or Senator Johnson was asked to go to a university and just have a discussion. So it went from a bill to just a discussion.
So the bill, he was proposing this new bill, and he had to remove that and just turn it into he decided he was still going to continue having a dialogue though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so he called me and asked me if I would be his co-partner in this panel discussion. And I said, absolutely. I will talk about this stuff all the time with anyone who's willing to listen, because it's that important.
And this is in the state of Utah that this is occurring. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And where was
really
the
shocking
panel discussion? Was that a school?
Yes.
A university?
It was at Weber State University.
Okay.
So, and Weber State, in my opinion, from what I'm learning about it, is a lot like Evergreen, in that they accept anybody. Lots and lots of financial aid, to the point that people don't pay for anything. And now I found out that there are, I'll talk about her, but there's one person there who's a former professor, and she collects the vulnerable, and she takes them to her home, and she trains them to be activists. So when I got there, I pulled up, and as I was driving, I got a message that there was going to be a protest. And I'm thinking, a protest of what? I'm just, okay. So all I wanted to do was explain what DEI is, that it is never diversity of thought. It's always inclusion at the exclusion of other people. And equity always means equal outcomes. So these kids, the room was full. There was about 300 people plus an overflow room. And then these kids all march in, and I mean march. So they march in, and they're carrying their protest signs, and they have signs that say, "Why are you afraid of diversity?" And just signs that really were kind of narcissistic, and that they're just talking about all of their problems. Just like they just wrote all of their problems on their boards, and and they had them in front of them. Well, before I could even start talking, one of the state representatives, who she has actually said she doesn't believe that any white people died in the Civil War.
In the Civil War?
in the Civil War, that no white
Okay.
people died, and also in the civil rights movement that there were no white people who stood up for.
Wow.
So, and that
She's
was,
totally rewriting history.
she's very much, in fact, she even said, I am the face of DEI.
Mm.
And I was like, and that right there should be a warning to everyone, because the very first thing that she said, my YouTube channel used to be called Martin's Daughter.
Mhm.
And the reason for that was because I was inspired by Martin Luther King's speech, right? His speech about merit and the content of our character. And so the very first thing she said is, some conservatives like to use Martin Luther King as if he would have been on their side. So let me read you this speech. And the speech she read was about him demanding that white people be held accountable for the things that they've done.
Mhm.
As if I didn't already know that. And that isn't why I changed the name of my thing, because I am not a socialist. I'm not a globalist. Those two ideas do not resonate with me. So I didn't want that to be part of my channel. In fact, a lot of people were looking at my channel going, I was afraid to click on because I thought you were going to be an activist. And then and so I changed, and I just kind of came out of the closet, as it were. So I get to this event, and they're wearing their signs. And the first thing I say, a big smile on my face, and I say, I find it rather interesting that you have these signs and you have these assumptions of who I am. But if you actually knew me, you might see that I'm not afraid of diversity. In fact, I lived in 18 foster homes over 9 years with all sorts of different people, gay and lesbian, Black and white, Hispanic. I'm like, that's not the point. And maybe if you understood. And at that moment, they all turned around and faced the wall.
Wow.
And they acted like they were in pain that I would say anything. And I made the mistake of saying, my personal assistant is a lesbian. And they started laughing and mocking me. And I was like, so that's tokenizing. But yet these other two representatives who talk about how they're the first Latin person in Utah, you praise, you clap, and you snap, and you do all this like beat poetry nonsense, right? And I was so shocked, because the issue is that DEI is linked into the funding. So it's not going anywhere, because every single thing about the university is linked into DEI. So they never had to address, because I said, I don't have a problem with people who have needs, having their needs met on a merit basis. I don't think it should be free, because when things are free, we often take them for granted. But I think that they should be something that people can work towards and pay off, that isn't going to cripple them forever. But I said, but the point of a university, and this is shocking to me as a mother of a young teenager, the point of a university, or the point of life really, is to approach maturity. I just did an interview with a clinical psychologist, and he had pointed that out. The point is to approach maturity, to realize that the world does not revolve around you. We're not doing these kids any favors by telling them that if they can't handle something, it's harm. You listen to these representatives talk, and they're just constantly saying people of color need to feel safe. And I responded to them, because when I first walked in the room, one of the representatives, the one who is off her rocker, she said, I don't feel safe with conservatives in the room because they carry guns.
So whether they have guns right now or not, she that idea makes her unsafe.
Yes. And I said, you want to talk about unsafe? I said, I had to have a police escort in.
Mm-hmm.
I was warned before getting here that there was going to be a protest. You guys know nothing about me, but you find what I say harmful, and you are in such an ideological place that you can't listen to other thoughts. And that is scary. That is scary. And Senator Johnson pointed out that Robin DiAngelo recently said that if people can't get behind her ideas, then they don't deserve to be in the workforce.
This is insane. I mean, the thing is, okay, so I was a former professor of psychology. You may know a bit about my story or not, but I left Antioch. This is how I connected with Leslie. It was through this other organization, the Critical Therapy Antidote. But, I was really drawn to want to talk to her because she was a student and I was a professor, and I walked away, from Antioch, and was public about why I left. And so this piece of it for me is just absolutely, it turns my stomach, like physically, because forget what I believe or don't believe. It's the fact that college is the place to be able to explore a wide array of beliefs and a wide array of, and so this, I think, is what is the most concerning. We're not teaching these young folks how to develop critical thinking skills in the way the word critical is supposed to be used, not in the way that it is represented today. We're not teaching them that. We're spoon feeding them. And as you said, this whole piece about the financial component, I worked at FAIR for a little while. We met with some Utah legislatures to discuss. They wanted to, put some funding toward like these trauma-informed schools, and I was highly against it, right? So, and I had, so we presented, our reasons. And the thing is, we had already known they were still like going to be locked into whatever decision was already made, but we did it for the sake of let's add more to this conversation. So, and then when I went to the school, the Utah Rural Schools Conference and spoke about this, there were, first of all, 2-3 people in the room at the most, but there was somebody there running for school board, and she thought, thank you, this is so informative, I understand more about what you are talking about. She was there very open. I don't know the outcome of that, and I haven't been with FAIR for a while here. I took some time off, but it is the fact that it's college, I think, more than anything, that just really gets to me, because that's the opportunity, kind of the early adulthood, but still kind of late adolescence moment to catch people and absolutely manipulate them in your hand as putty, and or the opposite, give them some tools on how to think for themselves and make informed decisions accordingly. So anyhow, it just boggles my mind. I continue to be surprised, even though I was a part of it myself. When I was teaching at the college level, I was teaching graduate students. So
Yeah,
it's mind-blowing.
One of the things that was shocking, or maybe even hopeful, so there's 2 points here, but was that some of the kids who had turned around and faced the wall, the second time I was able to talk, because I was asked 2 questions. One, what would I see as solutions in how we can teach about diversity without heading down this particular direction? And that one, they could not handle my solutions. But the second time was, how is this like the civil rights movement? Because that's what I say. This is just like the civil rights movement. And that's where the woman thought that coming after me with Martin Luther King wouldn't have been on your side. But I said, no, that's not my point. My point is that you had all of these people carrying signs that said, ain't I a man? Ain't I a man?
Yes.
They wanted to be seen as individuals, right? And so for them to be reduced into their collective is my point in how we're going backwards, pushing everyone into a collective and saying you cannot stand as an individual. Your merit matters not at all. In fact, if you are a high achiever, we're going to shame you.
Yes.
And I pointed that out to them. I said, we talk about how we can fix the university situation, but we don't talk about the fact that minorities are taught, especially Black minorities, are taught that to achieve is whiteness.
Yes.
So when I said that, 3 people turned around, and one person actually made eye contact with me. She looked me in the eyes and she smiled and she nodded.
Wow.
So they're not
incredible.
as lost as we think. But my other point, this one is why, because at first when I talked to Leslie, I was like, I don't know what I want to do about this right now. I just want to eat my emotions.
Oh yeah, join the club.
Because
my self-care method of choice.
Yes.
Really.
So, and mine happens to be hamburgers. So
I'm
that's
a chocolate gal,
and
but
then,
I'll eat a hamburger too.
And then after that event, and there was a thing that came out at the high school, And a young person that I know, who is part of the GSA, she sent me a GSA a link to something that they were asking, and they were telling all of the kids, and now we have GSAs in both high school and in some junior highs, and they were telling all of these kids to leave school and gave them a list of what demands they needed to make in order to come back to school. And it was a leftist wish list
Of course.
for kids in Utah. And
I
I'm
mean-
talking, they said, we demand that we are allowed to play in whatever sports teams that we want. We demand that we're allowed to use any bathroom that we want to. We we demand the Equity Act. I mean, this is so political for 7th and 8th graders.
Well, isn't that what the left does best? I mean, I hate to go there, but I'm going to go there because I think that so much virtue signaling that I grew up with, that I was very left at one point myself, because I believed to be left was to be a good person. This type of mentality, this isn't something that they just introduce in college. I mean, this is starting now. And I can even see when I was growing up, I'm in my 40s now, that they started this on me very young. I had a very different experience in my home life because my parents are immigrants and were very, I mean, they were conservative. I'm just going to say they were registered Republican. Well, my dad flip-flopped. But the point is, I got different viewpoints, I guess, in that regard. However, the school situation, they're starting with these folks at a young age, and they're telling them essentially that if you want to be a good person, you're going to be a left-wing, a Democrat or liberal. Okay, progressive. Even classical liberalism is not really, it's been squashed, right? And I would say maybe that was more of what I was even back then, but this doesn't exist anymore. But they know how to do this. They know how to get in there. They know how to appropriate funds for this. They know how to fundraise, and they know what to say. They know how to play the psychological game that ends up capturing people to where if you even consider yourself to not be that, then you consider yourself to be racist. And that means I'm a racist, white supremacist, white adjacent, internalized whiteness. I mean, add all of these word salads to it. And it starts so early. And it's very clearly politically agenda focused and minded. And there's financial gains that are pouring in. DE&I is a multi-billion-dollar industry now. Billions of dollars, right? I worked in DE&I for FAIR for a while to try to change the story and the narrative on how to teach DE&I, exactly what you were talking about, right? And so we have this whole pro-human movement lead with shared humanity and open the circle of conversation for all the unique experiences and diversity. Don't flatten people. Allow people to, there's nuance in life and nuance in identity, and allow for those nuances and all of those pieces to be a part of the conversation, but lead first kind of with what we share in common. And it was a great approach. It was so hard for people to get a handle on what that really meant, though. And with us coming in with something like that, these D&I companies or consultants or departments, however they're getting so much money, they're going to squash something like that.
Right.
So we got squashed. I'm just going to say
we have Bob Woodson coming out next week, and
great.
And so I'm on a panel with him next week at the same school. So
interesting.
So they were willing to say, I think that honestly, a lot of these people realize that they are in over their heads. When kids are coming in and demanding grade reparations,
yes,
we've got real problems, because how do you hire a professional in the future?
Yes.
When you don't know if you're just going to get somebody who has their own business and you hire them, and when they don't do a good job or even show up and you complain and they just call you a racist.
I worked at an organization once, and I'm not going to say which one it was. We had, I was a supervisor there. I was in a management capacity. I'll try to kind of refrain from even saying what my title was. And we had a Black woman who was working there. I'm not going to say what position she was in. But in my position, I had the, authority, if you will, to write people up. I mean, people reported to me, right? So, and I very rarely had to do that, thankfully. But anyhow, there was an incident where she shamed me just sort of publicly, like at the, at one of our meetings, and other people witnessed it. Okay. And so I went to the head person and said, I really got to write her up. I know she doesn't report to me, but this is, and her answer to me was, well, she's Black, she'll sue us. So
Yeah.
now we're talking about before. Okay. So this was, okay. I don't really want to say the year to kind of keep that place protected, but the point is, this was definitely over 5 years ago. So what I'll say about this is that this whole brewing of all of this has been the brewing, it's the boiled frog concept. It's been around and had been already starting for somebody to say that. I went to some board folks about that and some other things happening there. And then it was like, sorry, I mean, essentially we agree.
Yeah.
They sue. Okay, so to even say they, okay, right? Is that, I mean, was she really being protected and her rights being protected? Absolutely not. They, so then that was, it wasn't about what she did was not wrong. It was about, she's going to sue us. We need to make sure she's happy. So she was running and controlling the whole show because of the fact that she was Black. Is that not racism?
Right. That is the hardest thing, because I live in an area that is predominantly white. And I've gone to my school district and said, I will be your face. I will be your face because I'm a fair person, and I will look at the curriculum, because I know that you allow parents to do this. I will, and I will be fair. Like, I'm not going to say we can't hear that because it's too hard for our children.
Yes.
What I'm going to say is, you show this ugly, you show this horrendous, you show what slavery looked like. But you also show what slavery looked like in other countries and what it still looks like today. You have to show the unifying things that bring us together as well. They weren't interested. And now what I'm living with is repressive tolerance. So there are people who will get online and they will say things specifically about me. And when I write a rebuttal, a week later, my rebuttal is still pending. Because and I sit there going, okay, but wait, I am literally like one of your only people of color.
Yes.
And you are saying that you're doing this to be anti-racist. And I'm sitting there going, no, you're just as bigoted. You're just using it as an excuse now.
That's right.
Because they've always felt superior, I think.
Yes.
And that's a hard thing to understand. Like that I grew up with people believing that they were inherently better than me.
Yep.
That is hard.
This movement is white supremacy, in my opinion, at the forefront, because so much of it, right, was launched by Robin DiAngelo. She's white, isn't she? The last time I checked. Okay, so all of this is now, if you really want to call this, talk about white supremacy, now you have white people telling people of color, POC, my favorite, POC, I can't stand it. Obviously, I'm not white myself. You have these people now telling you how to be the right kind of person of color. They're telling you how to be the right kind of anti-racist. They're telling you how to be the right kind of, non-bigoted acceptance of everybody. If you want to really break this down into white supremacy, it's still white people telling you how to be in your own skin.
Yes.
Can we just do that? I mean, and I'm not even a white supremacist, kind of, that's not my shtick, but if I really break down the complete hypocrisy, that's where this came from. A bunch of white folks.
Well, and then you take the Black people who are perpetuating it, and it's so different, in my opinion, than Black people on the plantation who were the leaders. I mean, who were the were the master's hand, right? Who they're the ones who would whip the other people.
Yes.
It's like, let's keep you down while we rise up.
Yes.
And that is truly what this looks like, because these people are so ugly that they will walk in and remove your stuff. If you've like set your stuff down, you've come to an event and you've set your stuff, they will remove it.
Carrie, I wanted to share this picture that you sent me of the of what this is. Did you take this photo when you were?
No, when I pointed out that the immaturity of people, saying that they were for inclusion, but they could not listen to diversity of thought. somebody else took the picture, but that's what
Mhm.
I stared at the entire time.
And these people literally turn their backs on you. These college age kids literally standing with their backs to you while you were speaking.
Yeah, these people who say, if you don't affirm us in every possible way,
Mhm.
that you are erasing us,
Mhm.
made a choice to come to an event and erase others.
Mhm.
So,
That is so powerful what you just said. Oh, excuse me.
Something that you said about one of the young people turning and looking at you, or a couple of them turned and looked at you. One of them made eye contact and sort of nodded at things that you were saying.
yeah,
And that made me think about how, as a mom of teenagers, when my girls were teens, I can remember a lot of times you talk to them and they give you a blank look. They don't look like they're absorbing it, but later on, it comes out that they really are. They really are listening. And I think it's really profoundly powerful that you kept talking and that you remained, calm and reasonable and let them see. They'll soak it in. And I bet a lot of them will remember that you were the adult in the room and that the person who was inviting them to behave in such a disrespectful way to somebody speaking was the one who was really out of line. I can only imagine that some of these people will later absorb this and come out with a different perspective.
I
I hope
agree.
so. Afterwards,
Mhm.
a couple of days later, there was the Freedom Fighters Award, and I was getting one of their awards. And this woman, yeah, this is that.
I wanted to share this one too, but I want to hear your,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So this woman, she walks up to me and she goes, "I was at the panel discussion," and I'm like, "Oh great!" I'm thinking, I'm in a room that's going to be friendly, and
Mhm.
she goes, "Well, take this however you want to, but you come off as a very angry person."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Okay." And she said, "So how does that make you feel?" As if she was my therapist.
Yeah.
And I said, "You know, okay, I'm okay with being angry." I
Yeah.
said, "When it's our children on the line, I think there's a time when we don't play nice anymore.
Mhm.
When our kids are behaving like they're in a cult, I think there's a time that we don't play nice anymore. Our kids are being used as political pawns,
Yes.
and it's no, because here's the thing, in Utah, it's all about nice."
Yes.
I hope
Mhm.
you guys cannot hear my hysteric dogs. That's why I've got my headphones on. But good. Okay. Um when in Utah, the culture is to be nice. They
Mhm.
Mhm.
just had a general conference and there was a
Mhm.
lot of conversation about be nice, don't make waves, whatever else. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but then we sacrifice our kids.
Yes.
We have so many people who are in GSA who are not even gay or lesbian. They are
Yes.
they are called in to be allies,
They're
and
allies.
then they're going out and doing this.
And
Yep.
so this is GSA. I'm sure people probably know Gay Straight Alliance. It's a
Yeah.
I guess becoming a popular thing in schools. This is sort of new to me. I wasn't a thing that was around, I don't think, when my girls were in high school. Maybe it was on the back burner and just a small thing, but I'm
Yeah.
hearing a lot more about it. And so they sent this out. And you want to talk about what this is, Carrie? This.
Yeah, they sent this out, and the reason it didn't go was because of well, it could be two things, but one I think was the situation in Tennessee.
Mhm.
And then the other reason was the um we had a statewide gun threat
Hmm.
that same day. So I don't know if those two things were tied together, but this was sent to me by a young person in high school.
Mm.
And she was just like, there's probably, oops, I shouldn't have said she. Oh well. Um uh Probably about 8 of us who are actually on the queer side.
Mm.
And I explained to her that that queer, that she shouldn't use the term.
Mm.
I just said, be your own unique self, but queer
Yeah.
is queer theory, and they're using you. They want you to be activated. So I explained to her what I explained to her Gail Rubin's queer theory in the best way that you can talk to a person of her age.
Mm.
And this was a list, and it's just look at the pictures. I mean, it's geared towards
These
young
are
people.
so obnoxious. I think that the graphics they're
Yes,
just aesthetically offensive.
but they're geared towards young people,
Kids. Yeah.
kids. And
It's
is
queer
that the
youth.
groups want them in elementary schools too.
By queer youth for queer youth. These
Yeah.
really horrible looking graphics. Gosh, so ugly. This is their list of demands.
Yes.
So,
and as you go down the list, it's
the thing too is like, okay, if we look at kind of the civil rights movements at various points in our own generations, and young people at the college level, right, we're all marching and protesting. When I was in college, it was, at least for women, it was Take Back the Night. I mean, that was a big, huge deal, and we were out there and the whole thing, and that was fine. But the problem here, even more so, I think, than the CRT stuff is the gender issue, and this, because now we're involving doctors, we're involving medication, we're involving altering your body in a way that you cannot undo. So even if you talk to these detransitioners, right, you cannot fully undo what's been done. And a lot of them have all these sorts of other, physical issues that are going to continue on now. And so I can't, when people tell me, well, Christine, it's just another trend, and and that'll a fad that'll go away, and it's a movement. No, because in my opinion, this is very carefully constructed to use these people that are vulnerable, who want a cause, who want to stand up for something, to achieve a political agenda. They are boots on the ground. They're pawns in a war without any bloodshed, technically, no weapons needed, no provisions for your army needed. This is a group of soldiers, foot soldiers on the ground, to do the bidding of all of these other bigger corporations, bigger woke agendas, bigger globalists, elitists, cabalists, I mean, fill in the blank, socialists, communists, all of that, all of the above. So I do not think that we can just throw this to the side so lightly and say, well, it's just a trend that's going to fade. And the cult thing, the cult issue, there's a good book out there, I've mentioned it before, from Maria Keffler. You may know this one, Carrie, I'm not sure, but it's called Detrans, Desist and Detoxify, or I think.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not heard of this.
Okay, so she's a social worker. Let me get the exact title. She's a social worker that wrote a book on the trans, the trans cult-ish kind of situation. And so I've read her book multiple times. I put together a presentation. Actually, I put together a couple of articles for a Substack that I'm putting out with Bonnie Snyder. I don't know if you know who she is, but she wrote the book Unindoctrinated, which is all about kind of what's happening at the schools and how the indoctrination stuff has happened. She has tons of peer-reviewed journals in there to sort of back up her points and whatnot. So she and I kind of met. It's a long story, but so we started to work on some stuff together and decided that we were going to put a Substack together for parents. I'm not a parent. I don't have children, but I cared a lot about this movement, or protecting the kids, because they're going to be the decision leaders one day. So either way, whether you have kids or not, you're going to be affected by what's going on for them. So anyhow, we started writing a bit about cults and the fact that all of this is sort of cult-ish. But even prior to that, so that, I mean, we put together some good material. I'm excited for when it goes out. I'll keep you guys posted, but we put together some good material about the cult kind of quality. So this woman, Maria Keffler, I heard her speak to at some event. So the book is called Desist, Detrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. And she had a daughter who, was sort of trans or whatever was going on with her. And she talked about what her journey was and getting her daughter to kind of get out of that cult and kind of return back to what the actual underlying pain or issue or suffering or whatever she was going through. Even the need to belong to a group. I mean, there's this need to belong, right? So even all of it is being exploited. So she talks about that. And the way that she talks about cults is very much matched up with other people who write about cult thinking. They literally take the kind of the the
vulnerable.
components, yes,
Yeah.
of what a cult
Mhm.
should be.
Well,
And they use that, right, to bring these people in, whether it's a religious cult, a Waco situation, or a cult like the gender cult movement. Which this is
right.
the cult now that's the problem, clearly. So
Well,
anyhow, it's a
wasn't it?
great book. Make note of it. It's
Just
helpful.
before we get off of
Yeah.
this page, I just want
Yes.
to real quick highlight this because this stands out to me. One of their demands: remove dress codes that are racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, nativist, xenophobic, mentalist / sanist, or classist.
So
So
should I
this
just
is new
walk around
language right
naked?
here.
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
nude,
this,
is that okay?
this right here, mentalist and sanist.
Right.
That's the new
What
thing
does
to me.
that
So now
mean?
it sounds like they're trying to create a sense that in expecting sanity is
Yes.
oppressive.
Yes.
Wow.
Have you-
There is
Okay,
no
I can't
truth but
even-
power. There's no truth.
Sanist.
Literally,
Sanist.
yes.
So
Okay.
sanist. In
When I
and of
first saw it, I thought it was
itself.
Satanist.
Okay. Yes, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So sane thinking is considered
Oppressive somehow.
oppressive.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only truth is power, right? Which is the
Yes.
word critical. They've aligned critical with power. That's why that
Yes.
is so powerful, because that's the new definition. They like to change definitions. That's the new definition of critical, right? There's
Right.
the idea that in every system there's a power structure at play, and you're either on the
Yeah.
side of the powerful, which you harm others, or on the powerless, which you are the victim. That's in every
But they're
structure.
extremely powerful.
Yes.
They're extremely powerful.
Yes.
They are changing the way we work in society to a place that doesn't work. And the other thing
Yeah.
is, they are at times violent. So to pretend that they don't have to be violent isn't true. They prey on the autistic. So in the autistic,
Yeah, that's a good
oftentimes
point.
don't have they don't have they're not connected to what they
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
So if they punch you, oh well, right? And so there's
Wow.
so violence is, that's what I saw. What I saw was all of these people. Last year I was interviewing people who were running for office, and I spoke to a sheriff, and they had said, oh, Antifa's never coming into we'll never let it cross into the borders of our town. And I thought, well, you will
Yes.
if they're
yes.
homegrown.
Yes.
If they are grown in your home and
That's
in your
right.
house, then
Mhm.
then you will.
Mhm.
And
Which-
these guys are one step away from that. If
Yes.
these kids leave school, the next thing is oh well, they didn't see you enough. You didn't make enough notice. So go destroy something.
Yes.
That's, having come from Seattle during George Floyd. I am
boy.
like, this is exactly, we are on the precipice. And
Yes.
meanwhile, the direction in Utah is be kind. Just be kind. Just accept. Don't make anybody feel uncomfortable. And it's like, no,
Safe
because it's not
spaces, right?
kindness. Safe spaces. It's not kindness, because when these kids come out of their cult, which many of them do,
They will not be equipped to deal
and they have so much guilt.
psychologically, everything. Correct.
They have so much guilt. They're angry. They're furious. Who did this to me? Why did they do this to me? Why did they let me cut off this part of my body? Why did they,
Yeah.
nobody wants to be around me because I'm a miserable human being who only talks about my victimhood. Why did you do this?
That is such a good point. I really, and it's something I personally didn't even think about until you just said it. And I think that's something that has to be, kind of fleshed out a bit, is to think about the after effects after getting them out. Because right now we're a lot of people that are kind of trying to get involved in this or thinking about getting them out, but it's the aftermath of what you're talking about, of the psychological damage, of the anger, and even being equipped to function in the world, where one of the kind of presentations I put together from Bonnie Schneider's book was about the importance of, social or civil discourse in classrooms, right? So there's not just a narrative, but there's obviously facts are presented, or what we know to be maybe historically accurate to the extent that we can know it being accurate, right? So there's always inconsistencies, but the point is, here are some historical facts. Now your interpretation of that's the dialogue, that's the understanding, that's the thinking behind it, that's supposed to be a part of this social discourse. One of the points I made in there is that the problem is when you don't allow kids to either A, be exposed to other ideas, and or B, to fail in class. They don't learn how to fail as adults. And if you can't fail as an adult, that's when you get yourself into this kind of trouble. That's the kind of fragility of the ego and the narcissism that, when you did that beautiful interview with Yaku, my co-host, I adore him. But that's a lot of what ends up happening, right? Is that entitlement, that, the lack of ego strength, in a sense, it completely dismantles, to use that word, internally for them, because they don't know how to tolerate, they don't know how to tolerate distress or feeling upset, or that life isn't fair, or angry, or, people did this to me, all of those things that you learn when you're younger, how to tolerate, which is why everybody can't get first place.
And that's why I think of this as an anti-resilience movement. I mean, that's the whole thing, is they're just breeding a lack of resilience in young people.
The very fragility that they say that they're supposed to hate, they are growing.
Yes,
that's what I used. I said, you guys read Robin DiAngelo and quote her, and I'm like, and who's the fragile one?
Yes.
I'm like, I can sit in a room and have you all have your backs to me. And I'm like, you want to talk about feeling unsafe? That feels pretty unsafe, because who knows what's next. But you guys are the ones who are the very fragility that you claim to be against. They're so broken. And so when that woman said to me, "You seem angry," I'm like, yeah, I'm angry. I am. For the first time in my life, I'll embrace that angry Black woman if that's what I have to, because leave our kids alone.
Yes.
That's all. Like, that shouldn't be controversial.
Yes.
Well, and that's a clear case of, it sounds like narcissistic reversal, honestly. I mean, to blame the person who's been victimized, the person who's had aggression directed at them, to then point the finger and go, "Oh, look at you, you're angry," to invalidate you based on your reaction to something that you're legitimately responding to.
Yeah.
So
it was very much gaslighting. That's how I felt. And maybe that wasn't her intention. I want to be fair, because she did come to an event that would have made her uncomfortable. But it was definitely felt like, okay, this is Herbert Marcuse's repressive tolerance, where anything said by this side can completely and must be celebrated, uplifted, and magnified. And anything coming from this side must be silenced, even to the point of thought.
Yep.
And you're just like, and the other thing that Christina had said, about going after these certain people, is this is also, I believe this is Marcuse. I could be wrong about who it was, but it's, they wanted to go after the ghetto classes.
Yes.
And the ghetto classes were the Blacks.
Yes.
And the homosexuals.
Yes.
And they wanted a group that is continuously, and there's never an end. And I asked them in this thing, I said, where's the end point? Where's the point where it's not okay to talk about how much you hate someone else constantly? And these senators and representatives could not say that there was an end point. They said, "Oh, we don't have to like people, but you have to do what we say because it's tied to the funding." And I'm just sitting there going, are you hearing this? President of the university, are you hearing them say that this mess that you're in right now is not going to stop, because there is no end game? They feel very virtuous in their hatred.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it came up in one of the talks that I did with CTA, where somebody said to me, "Well, how do you be under this kind of, ideology? How do you be a good white person?" And I said, "Well, it's impossible. You're just never going to be. So you inherently can never be a good white person, because inherently it's never, like Ibram Kendi says, it's inherent that forever it will always exist till the end of time. So you must, in complete and total servitude here, on bended knee, continue to work toward dealing with your racism." But the lack of hope, and I mentioned this on Stephanie Wynn's podcast the other day. It just came out. I forgot I had said this, and I had said, the problem is it's so hopeless, and when you're in this hopeless state, it's almost demonic in a way that you cannot ever. There's no reason then to put one foot in front of the other and go. Why are you going to work towards something when the hopelessness is such that it'll never, ever work out? They want to break you down. They want you
Yes.
to be broken down and tired and lack of, sense of anything valuable that you feel
Nihilistic.
about your stuff. A nihilistic, fatalistic, all of it.
Yep.
That is
Yep.
the goal. That's the end game. It's not that it's going to ever be fixed, but the end game
No.
is to dismantle you as a person, everything that you are. It's not just an institution, it's the people who make it up too, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's dismantling the entire, from top to bottom, the people, the institution, the whatever it is, for some perceived, thoughts of a perceived definition of discrimination or any of the isms, racism and
Yes.
homophobia and whatever, all the isms that are out there, transgender, phobic, transphobic,
Yeah.
all of the icks and the isms.
I've begun to look
cetera.
at it as kind of a death cult, honestly. I mean, we're
Yes.
attacking what it means to be a living thing. We're trying to break people down into almost a computerized version. We're just ones and zeros,
Totally
it's-
true.
Transhumanism.
Yeah,
I mean,
transhumanism.
Which interestingly, you both, I imagine, have seen all of the things that have come out recently about the big fear of AI, the
Mhm.
artificial intelligence that's going to annihilate the entire world. Transhumanism, another topic here that's been talked about for quite a few years, but nobody said anything. It didn't get a whole lot of interest until we're on the precipice of falling over this massive cliff and exploding into smithereens, to the point that the left, the right, the center, the politically homeless, all of them are going, oh no, gee, maybe this was a
It's a
mistake.
bad idea. Yeah.
When
Utah
it's been
is
on the
huge
table for a
into it.
long time, transhumanism. It's just people
Yeah.
don't really acknowledge it as being a bad thing. But that's,
Yeah.
to your point, Leslie, that's exactly what the whole point of that was, I think.
Well,
It was to reduce you to that.
Yeah, to take away your humanity. And the attack on gender, it seems like you're kind of attacking us right at our most, I mean, that's generative. That's the essence of creation of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take that away, and it's sort of like it's a very nihilistic, death focused cult like thinking. I don't know how to articulate this yet, but this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, how this ties together. And
It's why the attack on Christianity is so huge.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's interesting because it hasn't yet attacked other religions that have similar beliefs, but that attack on white Christianity is huge because, that's where the trad wives are. That's where the different.
And you know what? I'd like them to interview a Christian who grew up in Egypt, where it's 95 to 98%, 97% Muslim. And I'd like for that person who's interviewed to talk about what it meant to be Christian there. Because let me tell you, I mean, it was, my parents came from there. I was born here, but they were Christian. So obviously, so
I would do that interview.
I mean,
So I
well, the
would love to.
problems that are faced here, and this is something I ended up, because I taught class the day of George Floyd, and I apologize to anybody who's heard this story a million times, but I was teaching that day when George Floyd, died, and the crazy sort of eruption and the apologies in the class and the kids crying, and not even kids or adults. Okay. I taught in grad school. They're crying, they're this, they're that. And I ended up just something snapped in me. And I said, you need to all understand something. This country is not necessarily the racist country that exists. Actually, let me tell you about what racism looks like in the Middle East, because you can look just like each other, okay, with the same skin tone, and the racism and genocide, or even intentional genocide without it actually even being practiced, let's just say. But the eradication of a complete group of people is the goal in some way or form, is so absolutely, it's abhorrent, and you cannot fight back the system. You can't go sue and get $20 million and a statue erected in your honor in some town. That's not going to happen. The police are more likely to either look the other way, they're paid off, or they may kill you themselves. Okay, this is not an exaggeration. My parents ran from a regime that was like that. And so that's why they're here. So at the end of the day, the complete destruction of Christianity is a very real concept and movement that happens in other countries besides here. What is that about, right? And what is it that what's their end game? And it's it like you said, right now it's the attack on the Christians. When is it going to be on the other religions here in the States? I don't know.
Or all the other groups. Like that was the
Or
thing.
all the other
If you
groups
look
in
at
general, right?
if you look at that picture with those people, so many of them are white men
Yes.
standing there, and you're like, do you realize that once we're gone, once I'm no longer a threat, once they've gotten this level cleared out, you're next.
That's exactly right. That's what people don't get. If they can go after one particular group, they're going to go after everybody.
Mhm.
And that's a huge problem. And
It's
I
a
won't get into
purity
politics,
spiral.
but yes, it
Yes.
is.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
and you know what? Do they even teach in history that the KKK was founded by the Democrats? Is that even in the history books? The beloved Democrats, who are apparently the moral regulators, they regulate what is considered to be moral behavior and the moral values that we have. That's what we're supposed to look to if we want to be good people.
Right.
Well, what about that? That's conveniently left out of the history books, that the Democrats were not the ones that were in favor of freeing slaves necessarily. Where is that part of it? Go watch the movie Lincoln by Steven Spielberg. I mean, it's a movie, and Hollywood is so incredibly corrupt and so incredibly progressive leftist, but even they tried to create a film that had some accuracy maybe of what happened during that movement and who voted for it and who didn't.
Right.
And why? Okay, because I'm not saying the intentions on either side were always positive or that they were good necessarily. They had reasons why they wanted to do this, right? And that's a whole nother podcast.
But we can't hold today accountable for what happened in the past. That's the thing, is that in Yako, and I talked about this, where he said they have to use tokens,
yes,
for their past oppression today. So if it was in your bloodline,
that's
you are guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that is insane, which is probably why Satanism is
Mm-hmm.
now
Yes.
a thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't.
so
Satanism, close to the word Satan. Is that what you said, Leslie? That was your comment.
Satanism. Yeah. And
there's something to that. I'm telling you.
That is really interesting. I wonder about all the people who have, because we have such complex bloodlines, especially in the United States, where people have been, coming together from all different backgrounds for generations. How many people have bloodlines where there's part of you that you would reject and part of you that you would embrace as the, who's the oppressor? You're both the victim and the oppressor, according
that's
to
my baby. That's my baby. And then my grandfather was a member of the KKK. Mm-hmm. And so my mother went out and got mad at him and slept with a black man. And that actually
that's amazing. That's amazing.
I've got lots of those kinds, but
oh my gosh, Karen,
but the thing is that when I was born, it changed my grandfather's heart, because I was the first, the only granddaughter in the family. So for a couple of years, because he died when I was quite young, he did have a different relationship, and so we have no room for redemption in what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And that's what's so crazy, that the religious, especially where I live in such a religious state, I mean, it's known for being religious, and they're embracing something that gives them no room for redemption.
Yeah.
It's just a continuous.
I haven't been able to keep up with the chat, but there was one comment that I wanted to read out. Emma Louie said, there's a conspicuous lack of nonviolent language in this gender race ideology. It was something that stood out to me in university courses. It's not meant to be a peaceful revolution.
Yeah.
And that what she's highlighting there so well, the conspicuous lack of nonviolent language.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's well said. And it is not a peaceful revolution.
Very well said.
Harm can be anything,
well
right?
said.
Harm can be an emotional harm, or harm can be, I mean, think about, and I hope that doesn't get us in trouble on YouTube, but just think about what happened in Tennessee.
Yes.
Nobody will talk about what happened. Our press is talking about, there were 7 victims. And I'm like, well, I don't disagree with you, because
you need
that
to look
child's mind was warped.
You have to look at media. I do not look at mainstream media almost ever, because it makes me crawl up a wall, and I cannot handle that kind of feeling. So I read a lot of independent, media stuff, some conservative stuff, but I don't agree with everything that they say either, but
Right.
there are some other though news sources that I tend to kind of lean on more than others, because they tend to just give bigger picture. They're all slanted some way, but there's at least details in there that give me a bigger understanding of
what's happening.
And of a story. And
Well,
again, it's not to be political, but like even, yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe I shouldn't say this, but even with what was happening on January 6th, I actually watched a live stream of what happened that day. I watched a live stream and I popped around from one camera to the next. So there were several live streams happening. So I watched a lot of stuff before it even came out on what was going on and people commenting. The fact that that was completely taken out of the narrative, right? And completely, and I'm not saying one thing or another about what happened that day. What I'm saying is what was presented to the public on mainstream media was not the complete picture. I'm not saying that because some crazy right-wing nut over here told me something else. I'm saying that because I actually watched the live streams that day, and I watched more than one. There were several reporters on the ground that were, and so with that knowledge, I think it was then that I realized I really cannot trust mainstream media to give me the full picture. They're going to give me this. They're not going to give me the context around that.
That's how I felt about Floyd.
Propaganda.
Same with Floyd too, right? We kind of, if you
there was so much not there,
and there was a lot that wasn't there. Right. And a lot of other pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, and just the other thing that I hear a lot of, like right now we're having a big thing with high school and misinformation. And so what they want to do is tell you what is appropriate for you to watch, what is appropriate for you to listen to. And that freaks me out, because our kids should be able to look and to think and to come to their own conclusions, but we're not supposed to. And that came with George Floyd. Remember, to ask 100%. Questions is whiteness. And that was set up. It had to have, I believe it was set up beforehand. Yes. I think that people could not deal with the almighty Barack Obama being out of office.
I think you're right.
And at that point, they lost their minds, because electing Barack Obama told people that they weren't racist.
Yes.
And so
you are so right. That is just,
and for me, I was
like a light bulb.
I was like, you're voting for someone because of their color? That's
wow.
Okay.
Yes. It told them that they were good and righteous, and they couldn't handle that. Now they
electing a white man after.
Yeah.
I mean, a woman would have been okay, but a white man after, it doesn't matter who it was.
Yes.
Because they were already into the cult. And the same thing, his language. Listening to his language, the first time I remember him saying, well, those people with their guns and their religion, and going, what's wrong with the 2A, and what's wrong with religion? Because I believe that religion generally makes people have a foundation and a sense of like a guiding light, a guiding force.
It's a protective factor against suicide. Like if we look at the clinical reasons of why religion, and we're not talking cultish, but we're talking about just the institution of having a spiritual foundation or a spiritual community, that is considered, when we do kind of the several point check on somebody being suicidal, one of the questions we always ask is about that, because that tends to be a grounding, if it's not a cult, again, a grounding community that tends to be a protective factor against something like suicide or mental health issues. People that have strong communities have less mental health issues in general, and when it's a spiritual community, even more so. So it's almost like, again, you take that away and you create, or you exacerbate, massive amounts of depression, massive amounts of anxiety, people feeling disconnected from each other. If you connect with people and create coalitions with each other and alliances with just your average, just people, just humanity, you become bigger than these elitists, you become bigger than the globalists, you become bigger than all of that. And you have an opportunity to kind of take their power away, right? I had a Black studies professor when I was in college, I'll never forget, who was talking about the, where he thinks racism, kind of took a different turn in this country, I suppose. Maybe that's, different turn, I guess is the way maybe he would say it. But he said there was a point in time where you had the poor Blacks and the poor whites that started to unite and say, wait a minute, there's too much consolidation of power here among this group. There's more of us than them. Let's come together. Let's go ahead and say, hey, you know, we demand, you know, X, Y, and Z as people of this country. And that's when they started to, there was an agenda there that began to start injecting some racism into the system. So they start pulling away the poor whites and start saying, yes, but you're still better than these blacks because at least you're white. So now that give a little edge, and then they start building on the edge and the edge. And this is a Black studies professor who was super active in the civil rights movement, totally all about, you know, that. And he talked about kind of the artificial injection into the system. And we're talking about outside of past the slavery movement. We're talking
being
about
able to see how the strings are being pulled in order to manipulate people against one another. Yeah. Because you're
first time I was
you're
ever
preying on
introduced to that.
vulnerabilities that exist. And so it's easier to do that. Yeah.
Well, so liberation theology. And then recently the World Economic Forum came out and said, they made a list on how religion can be used for good and how it's bad. And as long as it basically keeps people in line, it's good. You know, but if it fosters independence, you know, if it fosters reliance, self-reliance, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is it wokeism or religion? Is it
did either of you
its own
see
form
these,
of religion?
These
They'd probably be all about it.
That's exactly right, Christine. The wokeism being its own
is
religion.
its own kind of religion.
I just saw a couple of videos from a press conference in Canada. It looked like it was something official. It looked like it was something governmental. They're announcing new, you know, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but they're announcing some new protections for, they call them 2S.
Oh, yep.
LGBT.
Two-spirit.
Two-spirit. Yeah. But then they changed the
acronym.
Well, they changed the LGBT acronym to put the 2S in front of it. So it's like 2S LGBTQIA plus or something. But they've got the Canadian government officials standing up there surrounded by this group of really kind of outrageously dressed people representing like the diversity, I guess, the LGBT diversity, like drag queens and stuff. And they're saying we're putting into these protections for this community. And it very much had this feel of a state-sponsored religion to me. It really looks like its own religion. But it's like, here, we're going to give you your religion through the state. And this, it like fits exactly what you're talking about with the keeping people in line as a function of religion. That is okay. That's going to work for us well as the government.
Right. And that's the same thing where they, you know, again, it's that repressive tolerance. It's if you are part of this group, anything that you do, you know, if you
can do no wrong.
If somebody uses your pronouns wrong, you can kill them. Literally. There are people who have done this and they're like, well, it was hate. It was a hate crime for them not to do this. And you're
Did you see the Billboard Chris events that happened over the past several days? He was do you know who he is? He's this father from Canada that just goes around wearing a billboard.
Yes. Okay.
Chris Elston, I believe, or something. He's a gentleman from Canada. He's famous for just going and protesting peacefully by wearing a big sandwich board, like a big billboard that says something like kids cannot consent to puberty blockers or something. He has a couple of different ones, I think, but he doesn't yell at people. He's just out there having peaceful conversations with people. And whether you agree with him or not, it's just a man with his opinion peacefully written on a sign. And so there was this, he was protesting at some event with his sign, and he's surrounded by trans activists who are yelling at him and screaming profanity and screaming over and over repeated profane phrases in his face. And at one point he shifts and he puts his hand against the guy's chest to push him back because he's right in his face, screaming like spittle, screaming in his face. And then he gets jumped by the group. I mean, he just gets, like, the guy takes him down and there's the scrum, and I don't know exactly what happened, but he ended up with like 2 black eyes. He looked like he got the worst end of the deal. But those people, that was considered by the police that were present a mutual fight. They called that a mutual fight. And so they didn't arrest any of the people who attacked him. And so that's your perfect illustration of what you're saying right there, Carrie, the repressive tolerance. These people can do anything. They can attack you physically, but your being there is enough of an offense. Your being there is violence in and of itself, just with your opinions.
It's almost as if my existence, right? It's almost as if they would like to remove my existence.
Correct. They do. That's exactly what they want to do.
Which is, and I did say this at the thing. I said, there's so much projection in this room. Mm-hmm. You guys say that you're erased all the time, but yet you made a conscious effort to come here. You didn't have to. You could have just not shown up. Mm-hmm. But instead you make a conscious effort to come out and let me know how invalid I am as a human being because I disagree with you.
I mean, how did you, I just can't, I'm thinking how I would have handled myself in that position. And I tend to, I've spoken at a few school board meetings and stuff. Again, I don't have kids, but I went in there as a taxpayer and a therapist and also professor of child and adolescent development. It's one of the classes I used to teach. So I went in there on that, and I was calm, but I could see a moment where I could have easily escalated, not into physical anything, but into just yelling. Okay. So I kind of want to ask you how you maintained your composure and stayed so articulate and had just a lot of meaning behind what you were saying, so profound, and you maintained your composure, because to me, that feels impossible for me as Christine to do. So I just want to ask you about that. I just think that's just an incredible example.
The word friggin' did come out of my mouth.
The word which one?
Friggin'.
Oh, friggin'. Okay.
I did
better watch that language there.
I did say this is friggin' racist. Yes. I did go as far as to say when you are reducing people down to when you are saying that Black and brown people can't achieve without your assistance, that is racist. Yes. That is racism. My legs do shake. I am not Joan of Arc. I'm not just this powerful whatever, but I am a person of faith. And I do believe that what I am doing, in the end, I win. So, or even if I don't win, I mean, I literally go to these things going, there's a chance that some crazy person is going to take me out and my son's not going to have a mother.
Oh gosh.
I do feel that way. That's a reality. But what I will not do is live my life with having a child who says, Mom, why didn't you do anything? Why do I have to live this way? And you didn't do a thing. And I look at so many people who aren't doing anything. And this is funny, but my son is about to be in the school play, and they're doing Newsies, which we call the Antifa play in my house. But there's a song in there that says, then stand for the others who cannot follow through.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is that there are people who cannot do anything. And I believe that we are born for such a time as this. So you do what you can every single day. And if in the end, in our lifetime, we don't see the change, maybe we've left something. Because my faith happens to be Christianity. And it's Easter's this week, right? Easter is Sunday. And nobody was more canceled than Christ. Nobody. And guess who came back? Guess who we're celebrating? So it's like, that's kind of the way that I look at it. It's like, I'm going to leave a legacy. And I beat myself up because that woman said, you come off as a very angry person. And I know that I didn't come off nearly as angry as I felt.
No,
not at all.
How you did that.
But that's why, because you hang on to what you know is true. And even if my faith isn't true, and I'm not ever going to say that, but even if it isn't, what I have to offer is so much more hope than the nihilistic disaster of hating everyone and looking around every single corner going, that person must hate me. I need to get them before they get me.
Yes.
And that's what our kids are being trained to live in.
Yes.
And I won't. I just won't.
I think that's what it is for me too, is, I mean, I get emails and things from people every now and again, or on LinkedIn. You know, I do a lot of these types of things too. And I, you know, my answer to all that is, for some reason, I was blessed to be in this position I am now, where I was able to kind of take a step back. Like, it didn't, the consequence of getting not fired, the consequence of not being able to practice as a therapist, let's say they took my license or it was suspended or something like that, or any other outcome. I was blessed to be in a position at this moment in time where I could afford to lose the whole career. I would have been horribly devastated, but I could, because I'm in a situation where I'm blessed to be able to not have to have that, and that I can do other things because I've been in the field so long, just, you know, just accumulating, you know, a lot of experience with other kinds of things. So if I didn't use that to speak out, there are people that have so much more to lose than I do. And if I don't use my voice for the people that can't use theirs, what legacy, and that's the word that always goes through my mind, am I leaving behind? And I was telling John, who just walked in the back there, I said, and I'm going to just be honest about this. I said, I felt a little frustrated the other day because it seems like, you know, I do a lot of this type of stuff, but not all of my friends and my family and my community and everybody really even know that I'm out there doing this stuff. And I was sort of telling him, like, this is something to where you can't do this and expect that you're going to get recognition. It isn't going to be one of those things. I mean, I got my little my lights for my podcast, my handy microphone, but at the end of the day, you know, it's not necessarily that people take all of this so seriously, because it's not technically a job that I don't know, get paid for. It's not necessarily something that I show everybody. And I said to him, like, I just have to live with the non-recognition and need to do it for me and for the people that can't do it. And it just has to be that way.
You also have to live with the hate.
Yes.
People hate you. I mean, people hate me. People.
Yes, they do.
I'm like, okay,
you know, you're totally right. And you're absolutely right. I'll just leave it there. People do. I'm very careful about certain things I say, because I know that. And if you Google my name, you'll see all the podcasts I've done, and you can just listen and then decide, oh, Jesus, I had no idea. And that's it. But that's, you know, I had to use this time or opportunity that I have to be able to sleep at night and to be able to say, like, okay, even if these people hate me or whatever, at least I feel like I'm on the side of history that is pro-humanity. I don't even want to say the right side and the bad side, the side of history that is pro-humanity, that wants to rescue my profession. This is like, that wants to rescue this field that I so dearly love and feel like I got thrown out of in some way, right? Especially teaching. That was my love. If I can't do that and try to rescue this thing, we're at this inflection point. I think in the field of psychology, this is going to go down in generations later when people are training to be therapists, about what the movements were, you know, that shifted one direction or the other. And I don't know where it lands. Okay. It's one or the other, though. This is not a middle of the road thing. You know, you either come back to
there's going to be a major split. This is going to create a division completely. And I think something that both of you have, this ties into what you were both saying, Carrie, when that woman called you angry, she called you an angry person, but and I don't want to play postmodern language games, but you're a person who's angry. I mean, you're a person who does a lot of things and feels a lot of things. And right now that was anger. Valid. You know, people get angry, especially when you threaten the most important parts of their life, you know, and there's a difference between the anger and the hate. And what we're seeing from them is this contempt for basic humanity, a way of life. It's
diversity.
Yeah. And that's something when I hear the word diversity, I've come to hear it as more about diverse, to divert. To
Mm.
divert is
yeah.
to turn away from. And so I really think that what we're doing here is creating a culture of turning away from one another.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's postmodern language games, but
But
It's
that's such an insight.
anti-human.
yeah.
It's anti-human.
Everybody says it's it's anti-white, and I'm like, you're going to lose people if you say
That's
it's
right.
anti-white. It is
Right.
anti-human. It is
Mhm.
anti-values.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
I love that you pointed out that said sanity, because I really did, when I
Yeah.
saw it, I saw
Satanism.
Satan, and I was
Satanism.
just like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's anti-sanity. It's anti the systems that have worked.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's really what they want to do. They want to destroy everything. And somehow they have this vision that when they destroy everything, they're going to rise to the top. But I'm like, you're going to be living in the same crap that everybody else is.
That's
Yep.
exactly right.
I know. I wonder that too.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that both of you had the time to come and talk about this. And I'm grateful, Carrie, that you shared with me what happened and that you were willing to go into detail about it today and really kind of discuss and talk about the implications of it and how it felt. And Christine, thank you for being able to pop on with us, because I love getting your insight, and it's great to have you to chat with about these things. And I saw just now in the chat, Nechama, is it Nechama? Thank you so much. You gave us super chat, $5. That was really sweet of you. And I really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who's been in the chat today. I feel like we have so many tangents we could take right now. And so I hope we can maybe narrow it down to one or two and maybe revisit this conversation and do it again in the future.
Absolutely.
Sure. Would love
Such
to.
a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now I have to go clean my makeup
Yeah.
because Carrie made me cry.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I
Her
know.
rousing speech. You're such a good speaker. I'm glad you're out there doing this.
It's amazing.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm-
it's
amazing.
wonderful.
Thank you, you
Wonderful.
guys, because it is nice to have a community that actually gets it, because
Yes.
I have so many people who are like, why can't you just shut up? Why can't you just shut up and not make waves?
We're
and
not
I'm
gonna
just
shut
like,
up.
No,
We're
I'm
not
glad
gonna
you're not
shut up.
shutting up. Please keep talking.
yeah.
And
But not
Carrie,
now.
I would like to get your contact info, because we're gonna want to get you onto our podcast, the CTA
I'd love to.
podcast too.
I'll
So-
send you guys an email together.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Because
Okay.
Rob and I are meeting soon and putting together our schedule of guests.
Brilliant.
Sweet.
Awesome. I'd love to.
Awesome.
So
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
so much.